Today's guest is known by most people for her stage-end interviews on Rally TV, but there is so much more to her story. She caught the motorsport bug early on with the Norwegian car scene. This soon grew into a racing career spanning over 10 years, scoring multiple podiums in the process. The crash of 2015, however, nearly broke her both mentally and financially, which threatened to derail her entire career. She's most famous, perhaps, for her reporting skills, having served time on numerous Norwegian motorsport shows before going all in to secure the job of a lifetime. And she's even sampled rallying. Strap yourselves in and sit back as we welcome to the show Molly Pettit. Hi Molly, how are you?
I'm great, thanks, Drew.
Good,
how are you?
Good. Not so bad, yeah, thank you. You're in the middle of what is quite a busy season. Obviously, the WRC has kicked off already.
I am, yeah, and I also cover the Norwegian Rally Championship. So we had the second round at the weekend. So that's the second of 2 rounds on snow and ice, which is always great fun.
We will come on to the Norwegian Championship in a little bit, actually. Something that I wasn't immediately aware of, but I'm very impressed. But before we do that, should we just go back to the start? Can you tell us, first of all, how did you actually get into motorsport? What was that spark that generated your interest?
Well, back in school, back in my teenage years, I was passionate about show jumping, horse riding. That was my thing. I started riding at about the age of 10. But what I noticed that I've reflected on afterwards is that I enjoyed the speed of the riding, the adrenaline. I'd usually, saddle my horse up and take it out into the forests, and we'd just go flat out, basically.
Wow.
And I just noticed quite early on. Before that, I used to do track and field. I used to run the 100, 200 meter sprints, and always been into sports and always enjoyed a sort of high adrenaline sports. And when you're on the start line of a 100, 200 meters and you've got 5, 6 others lined up next to you and you're just waiting for the gun to go off, your heart's pounding out of your chest. And that's also what I experienced horse riding as well. When you're waiting for your turn and you've got 12, 13, 14 jumps out on this huge arena. And, it's just very thrilling. And because I have no motorsport background, my dad, he used to be a proper adventurer. He used to climb mountains. When I was young, he'd take us to Switzerland and all sorts of different places to climb big mountains. And then he set off on this solo sail of the Atlantic Ocean back in 2006.
Wow. Cool.
So I've clearly got some adventure genes from him. My mum never ever had so she always wondered, where on earth did you get this from? But I think there are several people in my family with this adventure gene, wanting to pursue something challenging, something difficult, extreme, the adrenaline. So I must have some of that in me. And so when I hit my teenage years, I found friends that were older and that had got their driver's license and who were, building up cars. From those days, I had friends with Ford Escort, Ford Sierra Cosworths, the Opel, or as you guys call them, a Vauxhall Calibra, with turbo engines, and we'd be in garages, and I would just think it was incredible. And I couldn't wait to get my license myself because I was a passenger for a few years, but there were a lot of like street meets and it was very social. And I think at school as well, I didn't quite find my place. I didn't find my sort of group of people where I felt like I could be me and I felt relaxed. And I really did as soon as I found the car environment in the city that I grew up in the west of Norway. And it was just something that motivated me, something I looked forward to all the time was to go out with them.
I know exactly what you mean about being at school and not finding your people. I had the very same thing. So I totally get where you're coming from with that. So at 18, was it 18, 19 when you got your first car?
Yeah, so I was 18, just got my driver's license and got my first car, Citroen Saxo. And it was this sort of royal blue color. And I, pimped it out with a big stereo and, nice wheels. And
Standard.
I was
Yeah.
just so incredibly proud of this car, and I would just roll around with it all over the place. Yeah, it was just me and this car, and then these group of people that I just kind of found home. The car environment was where I belonged.
So how did that then progress from a little Citroen Saxo to the beast that you built?
Well, there's actually a car in between there as well.
Oh, was there? Okay, yeah, go on.
Yeah, the Citroen Saxo didn't live up to my sort of aspirations very long, so I traded it for a Nissan 200 SX S14A. So a proper Japanese street racer, I would say.
Yeah.
And this sort of brought me into, and it's something I talk about because it's part of the past, and it's part of who I am today, and it's part of how I got into racing. But part of this car environment that I was in was street racing. We would stay up until very late. We would close roads. We would have police radios, and we would race each other. And I did that. I know it's not a good thing. And it took me very quickly into the thought that I've got to try this on track. I can't, this is not something you should be doing on the road. But it was that, starting to do that, I realized that, wow, I really love this, to stand on a start line with a car and, put it into first gear. And then as soon as somebody lifts their hand, I'm off. And I just absolutely loved it. So I decided that I would pack up what I could fit into this Nissan 200 SX because it was very big, or the space at least wasn't big. And I drove to the east coast of Norway, to Oslo. And I knew two people on the East Coast, and I'd already attended a couple of these huge streetcar events called Gatebil. And I just thought it was the most incredible thing in the world. They arrange, now it's many, but back then, 3 streetcar race events per year on the big tracks in Norway. And anyone could attend with whatever car they had, and they would get track time. And there were also classes for like the extreme race cars that were built in Norway. And I just thought it was the most amazing thing, the builds that would come into those races. And the guys were absolute heroes to everybody who was there. And I was, 18, 19 years old. And it was like, finding some sort of paradise, all of these different cars and so many amazing people. And what I saw from incredibly early on was that everyone backed each other, even, competitors in the big races. If somebody had an engine problem and had to take the whole engine out, there were 10, 15 people from other teams who would throw themselves over it. And I realized, this is just one big family. And that's how I felt about that environment the whole time as well. And I used this Nissan 200 SX to do some track days. I also started a club for girls called Girls Go Fast on the East Coast, which got really popular, and we organized track days just for girls, and so many showed up, and it was just a great thing. And I realized that I had to take it further, which is when I decided to sell this car and then use some of that money to start building a race car, which took an awful long time. It took 4 years, but it was a fantastic journey. And I'll never, ever forget the first day that I entered a race, because I hadn't been on track many times before then. And I started off by entering one of these extreme races at one of these Gatebil events in Norway, which is just, a day to remember.
Yeah, I bet it was. I was going to ask you about the car club that you started, actually, because I'd assumed that it was just yourself and your friends. I hadn't realised that it had grown to that sort of level. Is it still going, or has somebody else taken it on?
I'm not quite sure, because it did actually, when I decided to part ways with the club, it did continue for a while with other people. And I did sort of follow that they had some events here and there, but I'm not actually quite sure if it still is around today. But I mean, I know several of the girls from back then are still around today. So,
and you actually worked on that car yourself, didn't you? You actually built the car. There's obviously pictures that existed of you actually doing the work. Where did you learn those skills?
Yeah, so I had a boyfriend at the time as well who was skilled in those areas of building up race cars, and had lots of friends who had different skill sets. So it was just a continuous work over many years. And I decided to buy another Nissan 200 SX, but this time a much older one with the 1.8 liter turbo engine, and
Okay.
transform it into a bit of a hybrid, with a much newer front to the car. And the reason it landed on a car like that was because I had originally decided to start drifting. And of course, everyone knows that the Nissan 200 SX is a great drift car. It's a rear wheel drive, turbo engine, great weight distribution. And it was only because somebody lent me 4 slicks to put on this car. And they basically just said, you've got to try this, you just got to see what it's like. And oh my goodness. I mean, when I did that and I entered that race, and the grip and the excitement of having 25 other cars around me was just like mind blowing. And I never looked back. That was it.
We're around about 2010 at this point.
Yeah, so 2009 was the debut with this purple, meant to be drifting, then turned a race car. And it turns out, so this was a 1989 model Nissan, and it had actually had many different owners on Norwegian roads. And as many people know, Norway, we have a lot of snow, we have a lot of ice, a lot of salt is used on the roads. And this chassis, unfortunately, was not good. And that sort of unraveled as I started using this car and racing, and more weaknesses started showing up that we hadn't really sort of discovered before. But the steel was basically like cornflakes some places. So I had some really nasty moments out on track with things just snapping in half. The car caught fire once. I just had so many difficulties with this car, but when it worked, it was incredible. Just this feeling when it just everything was in place and no technical issues.
I was going to ask you about the fire that happened, actually. How badly damaged was the car then?
It was so bad. I think us racing drivers, when something like that happens, personnel, they really cannot run fast enough. And when I was stood there watching my car go up in flames, I just was screaming, run faster, with the fire extinguishers.
Yeah.
And back then, it wasn't at the same standard we have today. So they basically just poured a load of powder in the engine room, no foam, which also made it it's just 10 times harder, and a lot of the electrical was damaged, and it just looked like it was game over, not just for that race weekend, but also for the rest of the season. But again, it's another example of this incredible environment. People came to help, people offered to drive and pick up parts. My mechanics at the time they were just like, we're going to give it everything we've got to try. And in the end, it did fire up and we did get out there. But unfortunately, the powder and then the water damage that followed was just too bad. And the electrical had to be replaced in the end. But it's always great to see the family they just wrap their arms around you, regardless of how well you know them or not. And I see that to this day in international championships as well. And it's great.
It is. It's amazing. And it happens a lot more than you might think.
Yeah.
From the outside, at least. It's and it seems to be cross-discipline as well. Yeah. I have noticed that a lot from the BTCC help out with rally guys and vice versa. And you've already started your own race team at this point, haven't you?
So what happened was that I came over this event company up in the north of Norway. There's an amazing track in the north of Norway called the Arctic Circle. And in summertime in northern Norway, you have midnight sun. Yeah. So, you can basically go racing on this track in daylight 24 hours a day. But anyway, this event company, they had bought from Japan these Toyota Altessas. And there was a Toyota Altessa Cup in Japan. And they bought a load of cars and they were suddenly getting rid of them. So I bought 2 for quite a low sum. And they fit straight into a GT4 class here in Norway. And I sold one of them, kept the other. We did some work to it. And then I ended up getting silver in the Norwegian championship that year. It was like a point between me and the winner. It was incredible. I won many races, had pole in many races, but at the end, he got me by just like a point or two. But it was just this amazing achievement, because when I started racing, I was 25 years old. I had no background whatsoever, no karting, no nothing. And just sort of on pure passion, basically, and the desire and the just never really giving up. And then I managed to secure this medal, and that ultimately led me to this massive deal with a huge company here in Norway. So I've been sort of 2.5 years, or roughly, of racing in my life in total. And this big company in Norway, I think they're ranked as like the 10th biggest American car club in the world, called Amcar in Norway. They wanted to buy a car that would fit into the Danish Thundersport Championship. And the Danish Thundersport Championship was what followed the Danish Touring Car Championship, which has been massive for decades. And has produced a lot of great racing drivers. And this would also be a Norwegian championship. So it was the Danish Thundersport Championship and the Norwegian Thunder Car Championship. And it was a Howe-built Ford Mustang. So Howe built a lot of cars for NASCAR, other championships. They shipped over a Ford Mustang that we picked up in the town that I live in now. And it's just... After building, 80s race cars that were completely rusted to pieces, and then moved on to this Japanese, Altezza that I got silver in the championship with, to then this just humongous jump up to this Ford Mustang. I mean, I couldn't believe it. A 5.8 liter V8 engine, 500 horsepower, just an absolute beast of a car. And it was just amazing. And they said, you will be able to use this car for the next 3 seasons, but you have to get all the funding for running the car yourself.
Yeah.
So I had been working a lot with sponsors up until that point, but then now it became really serious, and I had to just double down on the workload to try and get in the money, because this was a championship that was much bigger than what I'd experienced before. The car, much more expensive, when it came to parts, when it came to tires. And I found out after starting this championship as well that there's a lot of contact between the cars, and you need to fix it between races, and that costs money. So it was super tough, but I had some great partners with me, and what an experience.
Yeah, I've seen the cars race. It's a bit. Is it fair to say they're quite similar to like the Australian Thunder Saloons? These cars.
Yeah, in a way. Maybe not as nimble. Maybe even harder to drive in a way, because they were just so old school. Like, even though they were newer chassis, silhouette chassis, you just had this massive gear stick, that was this long.
Yeah.
And it was just, you had to be so aggressive with it. And it was just, the car was sort of quite simple underneath. It was just a load of silhouette pipes everywhere, and a roll cage, and then a massive engine, and off you go. And it was just brutal in a way. And it taught me a lot, because I have to say, coming over to a one make series, that's when you really find out what you're made of.
Yeah. I was going to say, what was the most important lesson learned then at that point? What did those cars teach you then?
I guess I learned how to, at the same time as I got aggressive with the car, I had to get very smooth with the car, because obviously the fastest way around the track is keeping optimal speed in all corners. So if you're too aggressive, you're going to lose speed in the corners, obviously, and not get, the correct exit speed. And it was kind of like, here's a wild horse, please tame it. And then, you'll get a smooth work companion. You know what I mean? It was,
yeah.
But in many ways, it was a struggle. I didn't fit, and I never was able to fit into that car, no matter how hard we tried. The way the car was built was built for a longer body, longer legs, and I struggled massively. I got huge back pain. I have pictures of myself just stood outside the car with my hands on my back, and it was just excruciating. Like, it was so painful. But I fought it because I wasn't going to, use or have that as a weakness. I just had to live with it. So if I felt that it was my toes that were touching the pedal, then fine. I just have to kind of, in a way, I shoved myself like more out of the seat to have more pressure on the pedals. And
Wow.
and in turn, that put a massive pressure on my back, so it was a constant struggle, a constant fight in that car. But I wanted it so much, that I just sort of, put it to the back of my mind, really. Yeah, I put up with it because at the end of the day, I tried so many times to sort of, no, but it's not good. I don't fit. And the thing is that if I got too close to the steering wheel, the gearbox went too far behind, and I couldn't put the car properly into second or fourth gear because my seat would be in the way. So it was like always something that wasn't right. And it frustrates me today that I didn't, but we did honestly try everything. So it wasn't like there was anything untried. Everything was tried. But yeah, I guess you could say the car was built for a man.
Or someone tall. Taller, maybe.
Very tall.
Very, very tall. So in 2015, and I've seen this, and frankly, it looks terrifying. You had quite a huge crash. Thankfully, I don't think you were hurt, were you?
I was concussed. I was bruised. And to be honest with you, the magnitude of that crash and walking away from it uninjured made it all very difficult as well, because people then didn't understand what I'd been through. Because it's like you go through something like that and you walk away unscathed, but I got to a point where I thought my life was over. It was that extreme, and it's almost like when you're not hurt, it's just gone the next day kind of thing. It's like, well, then now we move on. And I was still stuck in this massively traumatic moment. And it would almost have made sense to break bones in my body, but I didn't. Unbelievably.
Do you want to just explain what happened on that day and what led up to it?
So I was running further up the field, and I had contact on the rear. So my rear bumper was trailing behind the car, and the race organization wouldn't let me just race until it fell off because of safety reasons. So I had to pit, and the crew took it off, and I re-entered the race at the back of the field, which meant that I then had to start making my way up again. It was on a street circuit in Denmark, and this street circuit is pretty extreme. It runs around in the middle of the city centre around a park. It is just the tarmac circuit, followed by concrete blocks, and then tall fences behind them again. And everything was fine. I had everything was functioning on the car down to the final corner before the long straight. And I came behind a car that I knew I was faster than. And so my plan for the long straight was to follow him in a slipstream and then go out onto the left and then not pass him on the long straight, but to be level with him as we entered into a chicane. And then I was always very good up the hill, because following the chicane, there was an uphill section. And I always had a good exit there. So that was my plan, was to get him at the end there. And so that's what I do. I follow him. I go out to the left. I've got 220 kilometers an hour, and I push the brake. And the pedal was just like, there was zero resistance in that pedal, absolutely nothing. And on these cars, there's no, extra functions. There's no ABS. There's no help. You have to put every single kilo of your body into that braking if you want to stop that car. And it was just, there was absolutely nothing. And when you're traveling at that speed, and the chicane that you go into is then like a 50 kilometer an hour chicane, you have very little time to fix anything. But it was just the most incredible moment, because as soon as that pedal didn't come out, everything then slowed down. And I made a checklist of things to go through. Now, bear in mind, all of this is happening in the space of 1.4 seconds, roughly. So the first thing I thought about was, can I escape this? Can I get out of this? At the end of the long straight, there was like an escape road. And when you're traveling at that speed, all it looked like was a wall. So I was like, no, I'm not going in there. So that was kind of crossed off my list. Then the next thing was, there are cars in front of me. I do not want to hit them at this speed, because I do know that they are on their way into this chicane at 50 kilometers an hour. And here I am at 200 plus. And then the third thing was that at the end of the long straight, there's a big concrete wall, and there were loads of spectators behind it. And I thought, this is like, this is not happening. I cannot go into that wall at this speed. And whilst all of this is happening, I no longer can hear anything. And it's the weirdest thing in the world, but I have heard of other racing drivers who have been in big situations like I was then, who have lost a sense that you don't need to focus all the other senses on trying to get out of the situation. So it was dead quiet inside of this car. And the last thing I did in the space of these 1.4 seconds was I just grabbed the steering wheel, and I just decided to throw the car sideways. And then I closed my eyes, and that was it. That was the moment I said to myself, that's it. There is no way in hell I'm getting out of this situation. And what felt like forever was, I then hit another car, and I hit him at 216.5 kilometers an hour. And he then spun me around again. So I reduced the speed even more. And then I went nose first into the concrete wall. And the first thing I could then, I could hear again, and I didn't dare open my eyes for a couple of seconds, because all I could hear was people screaming and shouting, because those were obviously the people behind the concrete wall. And then I guess survival mode kicked in. I opened my eyes, I could see smoke coming from the bonnet, and my first thought was just, I've got to get out of here ASAP. And I sat so close to the steering wheel that when I had to get out of the car, normally I had to take the steering wheel off. But now I just sort of ripped everything off, and somehow managed to sort of get past the steering wheel and just threw myself out of the car and landed on the ground. And I just sort of was looking down at my body and just thinking, what the hell is going on? How on earth have I got out of this?
Wow. I've actually got goosebumps listening to that. Oh, wow. That's an amazing story. I've heard of several accounts of crashes in my time, and I haven't heard about losing a sense. It's not something anybody listening is really going to understand, hurtling down a track at over 200k an hour and having no brakes to stop. That's something you really have to experience, I guess. But it wasn't the end of the story for that season, was it?
No, and I've also got to mention something else, because when you've been through something traumatic, and almost every second of your day you're followed by this sort of haunting thought and image of what if it had all gone wrong, and I had to not only deal with what had happened, I had to deal with people not believing me. And it took several weeks for the championship, the series, to uncover that there was a production fault with the brake cylinder for the front brakes. They found particles inside the brake cylinders that had basically clogged up the system. And by immediate effect, they dropped the supplier of the brake cylinders. And everybody in the whole championship had to then buy new ones from a different supplier. But to begin with, people were like, are you sure, that's what happened? Are you sure there wasn't a hole in the road? Are you sure, you weren't trying to do some sort of crazy pass on this guy? Are you sure? And it was like, am I sure that I didn't try and kill myself? Is that what you're trying to say? So it was so difficult to not have the backing and the faith from fellow competitors, from other teams, it was just all very difficult until it was confirmed that there was a production fault in the brake cylinder. So, talking about tough times, that was probably 10 times harder than the crash itself.
Sorry, Mal. I was completely unaware of that side of the story. I thought it was just a normal racing incident. These things happen, move on. I did not realize there was that side of the story. So when did that start? What, when you got back to the pits or a couple of days later? I didn't know anything about that.
First of all, I was checked out of hospital together with the first car that I'd hit during this whole sequence of events. And he was so angry, he just stood in my face and shouted at me for quite a long time. And I basically just said, well, shout at me all you want, but thanks for saving my life. But getting back to the pits, you feel this, everybody's talking about you. Everybody's whispering. Everybody's, pointing a finger, even though they're not physically pointing a finger. Very hard. But anyway, there was a bright side to this story, and that is that a lot of Danish fans and Norwegian fans started like a GoFundMe to get me back, because basically totaling this car meant that I had totaled a company's car in Norway, and I would have to replace that car. And I knew that was me done. I mean, that's me ruined. This is an expensive factory-built race car from America. So this GoFundMe meant that I got back out on track 2 weeks later in a rented car, a different car. And my goodness, that weekend was brutal. I think I was braking at 300 meters before the turn. I mean, I had zero trust in brakes anymore.
Understandably.
So that was hard. And what followed on from there was also just incredibly difficult. I had to try with every means possible to rebuild the car that I totaled. So I had to get hold of a new chassis. I had to pull every string that I had, get help from anybody I knew in the environment. And again, my extended family, they all, offered to help. And we managed to rebuild this car, of course, with my pockets emptier than ever. And I managed to return it in perfect condition. But that also meant that it was it's weird. I look at my racing career as a love story. And up until the point of this crash, I didn't believe or didn't want to believe that something like that could happen. And it was a massive knock in that love story. It was really hard to come back from. And I did try for a couple of seasons, but it was never the same.
I see. I think you would never go and compete if you even give that side of things too much thought, because I think that would just stop you from competing in the first place. So it's probably common that's why nobody really thinks about it. Those last 2 seasons that you were competing in the AM class because it was split between the pro and amateur class, but you still had results. You were still getting good results at that point, even though the confidence wasn't there.
it was good to completely change series, something completely new. And I moved on to the Danish Super Turismo series and to this fantastic little car. So it's called a Midget Super Turismo, and it's from a factory in France that actually Sebastian Loeb is quite involved in. He's got several cars from there, and he's got his own team in the French Championship. And it's just this amazing silhouette chassis with I first of all started off with a 2-liter turbo engine and then moved on to a 2.3 V6 engine for the 2017 season. But we're talking less than 1,000 kilo race car, 300 and something horsepower, massive 18-inch wide wheels. And the grip was just out of this world, or at least for me and my experience, it was just so good. And you could drive this car so fast. And I sort of fell in love again. and I had a great time. And it was a super tough field, 25 plus cars on the grid, actually much more contact in this field because suddenly you can fit almost another car in the track width. So, there were 3-4 of us going into a corner at the same time. It was ridiculous, but there was a lot of contact. And some tough moments there as well where, I was taken out. It was just hard racing. A lot of young drivers coming through that series trying to make it in the racing world and just willing to, do whatever it takes. And sometimes you ended up in the in the aim, I guess you would call it, of what they were trying to achieve. And it was just, it was hard racing, but I achieved a best result of 6th place overall out of all of these, 28 cars on my home track here in Norway. And that was something else. So, I have to say, if you're, I guess in any racing career, but especially for me, I was a lot older than everybody else. Just getting as quickly as I could into a one-make series was the way to do it. Hard racing, everybody's in the same kind of equipment, and you can really, test your abilities and see if you have a place.
Yeah, you really do get to see how good you are, I suppose, in a one-make because it's just you in the car.
Yeah.
It's a good proving ground, I think, for people, and probably a reason that they're so successful across the world. In 2018, you had your last race. But that was down to budget, effectively. So what were you thinking at that point?
I was actually really hoping to continue on in 2018. And I was actually looking into, it was a Swedish GT4 class, like with FIA GT4 cars. And I was in some discussions there and looking into budget, and I don't know. I can't really remember exactly how it all happened, but it just wasn't happening for me. And I was suffering massively financially from what had happened the years before. And also, so I was already in the red after that big crash, and then I continue racing while I'm in the red. And I'm using money I've inherited. I'm using money that should definitely be going to other things that you should be spending money on when you're a grown up. I was always on the back foot financially, and I brought that into the race car as well. Always worried, always panicking about who's going to be, rear-ending me next kind of thing. It was always such a worry. And I had, at home, what was waiting for me, bills from last season. It just became too hard. And parallel to all this, I was a couple of years into my role as reporter in the World Rally Championship, and I was seeing that there was a possibility for me to continue with my passion. Okay, not behind the wheel, but still I could, follow my passion and follow the best drivers in the world, around the world. So, it was just time to start making money instead of just using it.
Yeah. Difficult decision for any driver, I think. You just mentioned that you were a couple of years into the presenting side of yourself.
Yeah.
But that presenting side also happened quite a lot earlier. Did it happen around about the same time that your driving started? Was it around like 2009, 2010-ish?
It was actually before then. It was around 2006 where I started becoming this roaming reporter for Gatebil, this streetcar event. And I thought it was a lot of fun, just talking to interesting people and getting to do that sort of work. I just found that it was natural, and just liked to do any kind of work that had to do with motorsport. It was just great fun.
Yeah.
But I have quite a good story about the WRC job. After this crash in 2015 happened in May. And during the summer in July, a very close friend of mine said, "Do you want to come with me for a bit of holiday in the northwest of Norway?" And I needed to get away. I needed just, to see something else, see different people. And while I was staying with her, somebody sent me I don't know if it was a Facebook post or something about Top Gear that were looking for new presenters. And they were going to search, because this was during the whole Jeremy Clarkson, he messed it all up, and then they all left. And they had to sort of reinvent the series with new presenters. And they were looking for presenters amongst normal people, like just anyone.
Yeah.
And you had to send a 30-second video to just to describe yourself and, whatever. So I decided to walk up this massive mountain that was close to where my friend lived to build up the courage. And on top of this mountain, I recorded a 30-second video.
That's awesome.
And it was kind of the first step to just moving on from this crash. And I sent it in, and I thought, okay, well, nothing's going to come of that. So that was a good thing to do. And, let's just move on. And then a few weeks pass, and I receive an email from Top Gear saying that they loved my video. But now, they wanted me to make another one. And it had to be, several minutes long, and basically a day in the life. Who are you? What do you do? Show us something cool.
Okay.
And believe it or not, I was right in that time period, I was invited up to Trondheim in Norway to do a press conference for the World Rallycross Championship, as the Rallycross cars were returning from Canada to the next round in Norway. So I was headed up to Trondheim, where a jumbo jet full of Rallycross cars was going to land on this tiny airport in the middle of Norway. And we were going to go up in a helicopter, and a lot of important people were there. Petter Solberg was there with his Rallycross car. And you would not believe the footage. So I borrowed my brother's GoPro camera, and I basically took everyone on this sort of day in the life. Maybe not
cool.
A typical day, but it was everything from going up in a helicopter and filming this jumbo jet landing between mountains with Rallycross cars. And then the Rallycross cars coming out of the jumbo jet. Then Petter Solberg did some crazy driving around a burning plane at the airport. The firemen at airports, they can train on planes. So they lit this whole plane up, and then Petter just comes flying in, and then just did donut upon donut upon donut. And I'm filming this on my GoPro thinking, this is absolute gold. And just that whole day was mad. And I sent it in, and I got shortlisted. I went to September of 2015. I went to Dunsfold Aerodrome, and I was, what would you call it? I did a audition. Yeah, I was sent several scripts from Top Gear, and then I went and I auditioned in the place where they've recorded Top Gear for many, many, many years. And I just could not believe it. So the presenting went terribly. That was at the start of my presenting career. And I was, excuse the language, myself. And I was incredibly nervous. But luckily I had a moment where I was going out on track, out on the Top Gear test track, with a Mercedes AMG C63, and Mercedes were there with a van full of wheels. And they just said, just do what you want. And this car was so easy to drive. So if you ask me, have I ever done drifting? Well, I did that day. And they ended up calling it Molly Fog, because there was just wheel smoke all over their track. And I did my pieces to camera, and then I said, I think I'm done. Can I keep going? And so they let me drive for a while. Yes. And then I went through this whole process of auditioning, being interviewed, and it was super tough. And I met some great people, and in the end, I didn't get it. But I was one of what I was told, a handful of people that they'd selected for this job.
Wow.
But what it did do was, I always live by the words of, when one door closes, another one opens, and trust the path that is laid out in front of you. And just as long as you work hard and, you've got your eyes on the target, then you'll get somewhere. And what that audition did was give me the courage to contact WRC promoter and ask them for a meeting. So in Rally Wales of November 2015, I sat down with the executive director, or the executive producer, and the managing director of WRC promoter. And I said, have you got a job for me?
Wow. Wow, that's ballsy.
So
yeah,
you just got to go for it.
Absolutely. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? They might say no, or not reply or something.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that went well. You're on Rally TV now. So where did that lead to? How did that begin for you?
Well, they basically said, yeah, you know what? I think we should give that a go, because the year of 2015, I was also lead commentator for the Norwegian broadcaster of WRC. So I was already in there, and I was going to a couple of events per year, and I'd gotten to know a few people, and they knew that I was, that I knew my rallying, basically. And so they said, yeah, let's give it a go. And Rally Monte Carlo 2016 was my first job. And I got there, and it's so overwhelming. I mean, first of all, Monaco, I'd never seen anything like it ever. And then they told me, Molly, you'll be hosting a 4-hour live show that's going to be happening here in Casino Square in Monaco with celebrities who are going to do passenger rides with WRC drivers. And my jaw just landed on the ground, and I thought, what the? But also that took me back to the whole experience with the Top Gear production, that if I can do that, I can do this. Come on, you can do it. And we got through it, and I felt my first day on the job was done. And the production came to me and they said, we want you to do stage end on the first stage this evening. It's a TV live, worldwide broadcasted stage. And we want you at the end of stage. And again, my jaw just boom. And I couldn't believe it. And you know what? It's past 10 years now, and I love it as much today as I did on that very first stage end. Like, it's kind of just where I belong.
It's it's a slightly different kind of buzz, but it's very similar at the same time.
It is.
I couldn't imagine doing a 4-hour slot. I know. I don't even think I know I would dry up. I'd run out of things to ask. It's not. I think as a stage end reporter, it's all very well and good being in the commentary box, and it's all very well and good probably being on the road sections. I think personally, being at the stage end and doing stage end reporting has to be the hardest job in WRC TV. It has to be. You have huge emotions potentially running through the drivers right off the back of a stage. Not all of them are, let's say, free-flowing with information. So how do you deal with a driver that's possibly ruined his rally, possibly something's happened beyond their control, or somebody that's just quite cold and dry, let's say?
It's all about emotion, and I am their punching bag effectively, because I'm usually the first person that they meet after a stage potentially has been ruined somehow by a mistake from inside of that car. And in the beginning, I take it incredibly personally. I would struggle and I would suffer from difficult moments. I'd lose sleep over it. I'd be upset about it. And looking back, today, I'm very thick-skinned. Like, there isn't much that will, knock me over. And I'm part of this journey with them. And I think that's why I love it so much, is I get to be where there are no people from the team, no communications managers, no marketing strategists, no, people who can control the crew that sits in that car. It's just me, cameraman, the stage end marshals, and it's them. And that means that usually everything I get is raw and it's real and it's just emotion. And I also feel with my racing background that I just have the utmost respect for what they do. And no matter what level any of the WRC drivers are on, they're all bloody amazing. They get in that car, they risk their life every time they set off on a stage. And I find that just so admirable that my respect is through the roof. And I think they know that. I've been there so many years, year in, year out. I've not sort of failed to show up at the stage end. And I think you just have to have that absolute love for the sport. And I'm also an adrenaline junkie. You wouldn't believe the adrenaline I have at a stage end. It's mad. I'm shaking like a leaf because it's so exciting. Everything from watching the split times, the car rolls in at the stop line. It's maybe covered in mud and the brakes are glowing and, the whole car is fogged up and you open up the door and the driver, some drivers would just turn their head and then they'd pierce me with their eyes. And I'd be like, whoa, okay, here we go.
Game on.
Yeah. And some drivers won't even look at me. And, most of them, the sweat is just running down their face. And I just get such a feel at the stop line of what they've just done, what they've just been through, how much it's cost them in so many different ways, from pure mental, physical, just bravery. And I'm just still to this day, I'm just so in awe of all of it. You just can't, it's addictive, and I have this absolute need for the adrenaline, but I've also learnt from myself that I really need hard, tough work. That then I thrive. When the days are long and the driving is just so many hours and I'm sleep deprived and I'm hungry and I just, I guess I'm a bit like a soldier. I really, like it when it gets tough. And you have to be tough at the stop line at WRC.
Yeah. I am like, who? No, I'm not gonna do that to you and ask you who your favourite driver is.
No, please don't. Please don't.
No, that's not very fair. You've kind of just touched on this already, but it's kind of a two-part. What does it involve being a WRC reporter, and can you take us through a typical day?
Oof, yeah. What does it involve? So pre-event, we every time have a production meeting where we go through what's going into the post-production, what's happening every day during the rally. And then I do preparations. So my preparation usually is watching highlights from the years before. I will watch some onboards of specific stages that I know caused trouble the years before. I make sure I go through all socials of all the teams, all the crews, other journalists. I go through articles that are, I just go through and I make sure I'm updated on everything. Often, I go through the sporting regulations. I'll go through all of the documents that have been released for that certain rally. So, You have the rally guides, you have the supplementary regulations, there's a lot of information to take in, obviously, for an event on that level. And then we go to the events, we start gathering our equipment. Usually for me, that involves a radio kit, it involves road books, and you need to get the cars stickered up. And sometimes I get there early enough and I'm able to go out and drive a stage. Most times I'm not. I'm there, the evening or the afternoon before, and there's no time. But luckily, after all these years, I know the stage as well. And then, a typical day is up early, as you can imagine. And I travel alone, and I have done for many years. And I will meet different camera crews at stage ends. So I am navigating myself, and I have to, because I'm using Google Maps, I always have to double check, triple check, maybe check a road book that I'm on the right place, because it has happened many years ago that I've ended up in the middle of a stage. And how did I get here? Whoops.
I've done it myself.
And then I follow, the whole day via, we have our own audio channel from Rally TV, so that I don't have to stream directly from Rally TV all the time. But as you can imagine, we spend a lot of time in places with limited signal.
Yeah. So
there are occasions where I don't know anything. I've been without signal for hours, and so it's I need as much information as I can, but I've also learned how to survive without any. So I know that if I have absolutely nothing, I at least have the marshal's timing screen, and I have what I can see. That's what often it's all about. You can see a whole story unravel just by looking at the car and looking at the crew, and then finding things out from there. But you can see from my books. I have so many books from when I started. So little black books where I write down lots and lots and lots of information, so that when I'm out on stages, I can, look back, and before a stage starts, I will write down on one of the sheets in my book the road order on the left. I will write down the tire choices. If it's a second pass, I will write down all the times from the first pass and what position they were in. I will write down overall in WRC, overall WRC2 so far in the rally. And that just means that if there isn't a whole lot going on, I will, for example, he's got an interesting tire choice. How did he, and get to that conclusion at the last service? Or the time is way better than the first pass. Why is that? I like to have at least what I can, as much information as possible at my fingertips. So at the stop line, I've actually become very good at slotting things. So I usually have a microphone in there, a book in there, and a pen in there.
Wow.
So it's really funny looking at pictures. I've got different things slotted in between each finger. So I've become quite good at that. And of course, AirPods are in. I'm listening to the coverage, listening to Bex and whoever's joining her in the commentary box. And I've got the official timing. As long as I've got some signal, I've got that. And then we do WRC cars, maybe some WRC2 cars, and then it's just a sprint to the next one. Jump in the car, get myself sorted, get to the next stage. And usually on a rally weekend, it's every other stage. So that's basically what your day looks like until the evening.
And that's a busy day.
It is a busy day.
If anybody who's tried to follow a rally and get more than 2 stages in a day, it's tricky. It's definitely tricky in rally traffic.
If you look at rallies like Rally Monte Carlo, Greece, there's got to be some others as well. We're looking at 2,000 of road section that I'm driving. Yeah. So it's a lot of. You have to really enjoy driving.
Yeah. It's a good job you do.
Yeah.
About 4 years ago, you challenged yourself to learn, drive and experience a rally all for yourself.
Yeah. That was absolutely nuts. And that rally that I did 4 years ago, that was the rally I was at now at the weekend. So whenever I go there, I think back to, oh, goodness me, I've done this as a driver. But it was so good to do, mainly to just get a bigger understanding for the job that I do in rallying. Because, I do have racing and motorsport background, but, rallying is its own unique discipline. And it was just so good to be in the driver's seat and just get a small, tiny little feel as to what they go through. And it was just incredible. To drive a 4-wheel drive car on snow and ice, and this rally as well is so well known for its speeds. So on one stage, which is almost 25k long, it's just flat left, right, constantly almost. And it was just, you have to be so brave. And actually doing this rally at the weekend, hearing their comments, if somebody says they're not scared, they're lying. And I was so on the limit and my whole body was telling me to brake everywhere, but I know I can go flat. And it's just, you guys are absolutely insane. And I'm so glad that I kind of have firsthand knowledge of how bonkers you've got to be to drive a rally car. So it's about that time I get to know this car a bit better and test the seat. Been out on the ice lake for some laps, just getting used to the car. And good fun. Brian's being helpful. We're just changing around the tyres on the car now. And now it is time to check in and find out what that's all about. So let's go. Literally at the last time control, not the last one maybe, but we're at the final time control of the stage, and we finished the rally.
So you went through the whole process, didn't you? You went to a rally school first of all, and did the I'm assuming you got a rally license at that point?
Yes, I had to go through the whole license process, and then we did testing up at Jon Haugland, which he's a pretty famous guy here in Norway. He's in his 70s now, but he runs a rally school up in the mountains. Close to where this rally took place, and so many drivers have learnt how to drive on snow and ice up at his rally school. So I was there. Yes, I had an off, so I tried that as well. But that's often what happens on testing, because you have the same piece of road, you're going back and forth and trying to find the limit. And I guess a lot of the time you go over the limit. But no, it was good fun. And then just everything from the recce was absolutely exhausting. It was just relentless. The way your brain just has to compute everything that's going on, and we had organizer notes. So I wasn't making my own notes, but we were doing 2 passes of each stage, just reading the notes and just trying to look at the road and then process everything the co-driver is saying. I mean, it's a bit like I would compare it to presenting, where you have a producer talking in your ear as you are trying to formulate some nice words to come out as well. And it's almost like having to divide your brain into two, and that one part of your brain is focusing on the road and the other one is taking in the information of the notes. And the two have to coincide in order for the speed to be good on a rally stage. And it's the same with the presenting. If you start fumbling and stopping in your words, then even though the producer's talking in your ear, then, it's not going to come out nicely, is it? So you have to find a way of doing both things at the same time. And that I found very difficult, and also gave me such a great understanding of how many years of experience it takes to learn pace notes and to have that just be instinct.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
And to be able to visualize each note instantly.
Yeah.
When you then look at somebody like Scotty Martin, and the sheer volume of notes that he's throwing out, that just exemplifies that even more. I couldn't process that much detail if I tried. I do have massive respect to Elvin for that. I couldn't do it myself. It's just too much information. But the rally actually went pretty well for you.
I finished.
That's pretty well on snow and ice. So don't do yourself dirty.
I could have given it more, but the whole goal of the day was to get that experience, was to, do every stage, see what it's like at the time controls, see what it's like to come into service, just be able to go through all of it. Because had I, gone off on stage one, then that, would have been pointless, basically. So just tried to, push when I felt that, the risk wasn't too big, and get a bit of a feel for it. But just such a proud moment when I got through all of those stages. And I think when you do something for the first time, your brain is just an overload. And you talk about Elvin and Scotty, but, for them, it's so impressive. For us, but for them, it's second nature. It's the way Elvin drives, the way Scotty reads, it's an everyday task for them. It's so imprinted in their whole being. And that was, like I said, when you do it for the first time, it's just so overwhelming. Your brain, I think, is working 10 times the speed just to be able to take it all in. So, it went well. If we could just, if finishing is, I wish I'd been a bit faster.
Well, there's always other rallies. Would you ever plan to go back and do more? You've done it once already now. Has it been?
Yeah, I think, I'm one of those people that if I was to do it, I'd like to go into it 100% and give it everything I've got. I think it's difficult to do things, just a little bit of the way. I want to go all the way. I want to put everything into it and be able to show something, not just be the presenter or the reporter that jumps into a rally car and that was fun. Because I, at heart, I'm a racer. That's what I did, and that's the reason I am where I am today. And actually, I'm a commentator for the Gotland Grand National, which is a massive enduro race in Sweden. And they've challenged me for this year's event to do a lap of the track, which is 25k long. And so I'm currently practicing my enduro skills. So
oh, very cool. So you will have tried most things now. So having been a racer and tried rallying and that, which do you prefer? Or to put it another way, at heart, what do you class yourself as?
Rally is my life. I mean, I've never been a rally driver, but it's a sport that is just wrapped around my heart, I think, and I think it will be forever. I'd be a bit lost without it. So, and I think everything you do leads you to where you need to be. And the years of racing, they fueled that fire inside of me, and I think I've always been destined to work in motorsport at a higher level, and that's what I'm doing, just not behind the wheel, but I'm working with the best drivers in the world, and yeah, I'm definitely a rally girl, that's for sure. But being a racer was also part of that. Yeah.
Just a few general things now. So what's the best or worst part of your role as a presenter?
Oh gosh, putting me on the spot here. The best part is being able to tell the story, because you might have noticed I have a lot of passion. And I like bringing that to other people. You often think about, what good do I do for the world? I think when you go through life, you want to make a difference. You want to leave some sort of imprint. And I hope I do that via, helping the drivers tell their stories at the stop line, and also just through the presenting as well, just using that passion and putting smiles on people's faces, and make them also feel what I feel for the sport. And we all know that being passionate about sport, makes other things in life easier.
Yeah.
So that's probably the best part. The hard part. It's a dangerous sport, isn't it?
It is.
It's we lost a very special person a few years ago, and to this day, it's somebody I think about almost every day, and he's very much there all the time. And it was you see all these massive crashes in rallying, and people walk out of the car, and that was a bit wild, but I'm okay.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, due to the strangest circumstances, we lose one. So I think that's the worst part, is just knowing that it is a dangerous sport, and things can happen.
We shouldn't really overlook that. We've lost a couple, haven't we, over the last few years, and it's always hard. I never knew him personally. He brought a smile to my face on a number of occasions. But it's never easy hearing about losing the loss of someone due to an accident in the sport. So yeah, let's move on. Let's not get too sad by that. He's obviously forever remembered by everyone.
Yeah.
And of course,
absolutely,
something good actually came from it as well, because his foundation obviously is growing and going from strength to strength as well. So if you're not familiar with who we're talking about, it was Irishman Craig Breen.
Yeah. And his legacy as well. I mean, look at WRC right now. We have John Armstrong, Josh McAlean, two Irish drivers who are fighting their way up to the top. And I'm sure Craig is up there and is proud of what everyone's doing. So
I'm sure he is. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I'm talking to John on Wednesday.
Really? Cool.
He's coming on the show on Wednesday. I'm so looking forward to it. So what's the most useful lesson that you've learned in your role as a presenter over the years?
That it's okay to make mistakes, that we're all human, and to not carry it with you, because if you do, that rucksack's going to get incredibly heavy, and it's going to wear you down, and it's going to get in the way of your worth and your potential. And a mistake is a mistake, and you learn from every mistake. And it should also mean that you should not say no because you're insecure, or you feel that for some reason you don't have what it takes, you should say yes to opportunities, even though you know you might fail. And I've done that so many times. I've been asked to do things and I've just been like, yeah, all right. And then sometimes it's gone great and sometimes it's gone terribly, but I've still learned something from it. And it's educated me in my role in TV and sport. And so I think that has to be it, that if you make a mistake, reflect and then move on. It'll be a part of you, but it'll be a part of the learning that will make you better next time.
I was going to ask if you had any advice for new would-be presenters, but that sounds like it, to be honest. I like it when that happens. One final thing then, with our Women in Motorsport specials being what it is, I always wanted to focus on what you've actually done in motorsport, be it as a racer, a driver, a mechanic, or whatever that happens to be. But I do want to ask one last thing, and what is your personal perspective of being a woman in motorsport? How has that looked? How has that felt? And how has that shaped your career?
I've experienced it in different ways because, of course, I've had different roles in motorsport. Being a female racer was hard. I got more attention than my male competitors. It wasn't attention I asked for. It was attention I received, probably a lot based on who I am as a person. I'm quite open. I'm smiley, happy. I want to share the gift that I've been so lucky to do and to be able to race a car. I want to share that with other people. So that's always made me very approachable. We've had grid shows where there's been a lot of people around me and my car, and in the moment I love it. At the same time, I see other competitors think that that's undeserved and not right, as well as also getting to a higher level in racing. You have to perhaps be even stronger than your male competitors. In order to get that respect, it's tough, and I think it still is. And women need to keep fighting, and there is no reason why a woman should have any disadvantage to a man. And I think this will even out as the years go on. It's got something to do with generations. I feel that, our parents' generation perhaps wouldn't take the girls to go and watch rally and racing. And of course, the generation before that. But the generation now, you see a lot more families. That's what I see on rallies, is I see families. I don't just see dads and sons on rallies. I see all of them. And I think that's fantastic. And I think it has to start there, because you have to have that interest from a very, very early age to want to get into karting or whatever path you want to take. But I have to say, in every other aspect of motorsport, from my side, being a woman has not really even been a thought in my mind. I don't even think about it. I'm treated with respect. I have fantastic colleagues. It's family. Like I mentioned, several times, it is my extended family, and so many wonderful, great people that've got my back and I've got theirs, and just so many good, happy experiences.
The world of motorsport is so welcoming. And so far, fingers crossed, I haven't heard any horror stories, which is lovely to hear. Absolutely lovely to hear. And the thing with motorsport is it's about who's fastest.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. If you're quick, it'll get reflected on the timesheets.
Exactly.
And I love that about the sport. It's not segregated like football or tennis or those sorts of sports. It's come and have a go. And if you're fast enough, we'll see you at the end. And I love that.
And it's
Absolutely
the same.
Brilliant.
It's the same in other roles. You have to be, the best engineer, the best mechanic, because you work hard and, you've educated yourself, and, you can't, like in my line of work as well, you can't get away without doing the work, without having the experience, without reading up on everything, because, that's, you need to be that good, and that's what it's all about.
As you rightly said, the mechanics, the engineers, the office staff, everybody has to be working at 10/10, otherwise you don't get to where you want to be. It's it's a very good point. Thank you.
It's actually fascinating to look at rally TV, and I don't know how much people think about it, but we have to be such a well-oiled machine for it all to happen. I mean, imagine we're creating this incredible TV product out in the wilderness with helicopters, with a plane, with cameras, stage side. We are, completely dependable on good signal. We've got onboard cameras, outside the car, inside the car. And we all have to be on our game to make this product as good as it is. And, if one tiny little part doesn't perform to their very best, then, that affects the whole machine. So
absolutely,
it's fascinating to be a part of that.
I have to say, Rally TV and the coverage that you guys produce is second to none. We have never been as lucky as we are today in terms of the coverage. And it is far more difficult to produce it out there in the forests or the wilderness than it is at trackside. I understand why trackside footage is a lot easier and for TV companies to put on, but the work that must go into it is, I'd doff my hat for each and every one of you. If you don't believe us, just go and have a look at some older footage on YouTube or something. It's the difference and the progress that you've made, especially over the last 5-10 years or so, is something else.
It is.
So I thank you personally for that. Thank you very much, Molly. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me, Drew.
Anytime. Thank you, Molly. Bye-bye.
Bye.